Good morning, everybody. Today is Friday, August 7th, 2020. So I don't know if y'all heard. I'm not sure if you've been paying attention. I don't know if you've been reading the newspaper, and I don't know if you've been paying attention to the social medias. Something happened last night at last night's Police and Fire Commission, and we knew that something was going to take place because of all of the, controversy that has been surrounding the Milwaukee Police Chief Alfonso Morales. But before I get to that, let me rewind a little bit. There was a series of incidents that took place in a very short amount of time this past summer, and we saw protests all over the nation. We saw the interactions between law enforcement and police exhibiting the kind of actions and behaviors that African American communities and marginalized communities have been, screaming about for years. And you got to see it all play out. You got to see law enforcement in this country weaponized against the U.S. Constitution. I got to be real clear when I say that when people are upset about something they see in this country, that's how this nation was formed. People were upset. And really, it was a bunch of white people that didn't want to pay their taxes, and they decided to have a revolution. That's what created America. And so we have always held the ability to address and redress our government when we have grievances, to take our democracy into the streets. You don't always wait for an election. If you have an issue, you take to the streets, and that is protected speech. The same speech, protected speech, that allows somebody to fly a Nazi flag or a Confederate flag. That's the same speech, okay? So they can do it and promote hate, but when people want to do it and promote fairness, equality, and justice, then you weaponize the police and law enforcement against the U.S. Constitution. So there were a number of very disappointing incidents that happened with our police chief, including using rubber bullets and tear gas on peaceful protesters. And so my name on it, but us, started a petition. We started that petition on June 6th, okay? So just on the heels of George Floyd's death on Memorial Day. So we started a petition because the way the Milwaukee Police Department, and it's not even these series of incidents that we saw because of the protest, it's just been incident after incident and a lack of discipline, and officers that don't get fired, or maybe they do get fired, or they get fired and then they sue and they get their job back. We have seen this repeatedly, and what it does is it frustrates the community to no end, to where law enforcement just isn't even respected, because if they follow their own rules, if they don't listen to the laws in which they are supposed to enforce, if they can be so quickly weaponized against the Constitution. Now remember, peaceful protesters are the U.S. Constitution. That's very upsetting, and that brings up some very troubling details about the leadership that we have. And so for those of you that are thinking the chief is being treated unfairly, let me just put this in a different kind of context, because I know there's some people out there saying that it's unfair. Even the mayor's saying it's unfair. You guys realize that you get a job, okay? And it's a tough job. There's a lot of scrutiny. It's also a very important job, right? It's a job that it's political. It's economic, because I'm going to tell you this. We will gauge the desire to do business in a city, meaning start a business or go there and shop, go there and spend money, go there and be tourists, based upon how safe the city is. So if the city is safer, or if there is a perception the city is safe, that's economic development. So if you have a police chief that tries to make a city safer, even though they take on way more than they can chew when it comes to that, because they don't really have all that much say-so in what safety actually is in a particular city, but they wear that badge, literally and figuratively, wanting to make a city much safer. And so it's a very important job, but in that very important job, there's this thing called oversight. Y'all have oversight of your jobs. When you go to work, you can't just be lazy. When you go to work, you can't just punch people in the face. You can't just disrespect the policies and procedures of your job. And so when you have a very important job, you have these protocols that you have to follow. And you also have a review. Most people that have had jobs in the professional world, you get a 6-month review. Or if you're attempt to hire at 3 months, 90 days, they're going to review your performance. Now, some of us have gotten wonderful reviews on our jobs, and you're able to continue. Maybe you get bonuses, maybe you get incentives when you have that review. But you need to understand, including Mayor Tom Barrett, This is a part of the process, reviewing the chief's performance, his 6-month review. There's nothing new about that. But here's what's terribly troubling. And this is how Morales is going to ultimately probably end his law enforcement career. Because what he should have did is he should have resigned when he was still chief. Because then he maintains that category, especially when it comes to his retirement and his pension. He should have, but he didn't. You know, this man reported to work, last night, and was demoted to captain, meaning that the people that morning that he was ordering around and directing around are now ordering him around and directing him around because the boss just became an employee. Ooh, that hurts. And y'all remember when he compared himself to Jesus Christ being crucified? Jesus Christ didn't get demoted. Having a 6-month review is what we expect and is what we demand, and it's a reason why we have a fire and police commission. But now all of a sudden, his 6-month review, in which he failed the benchmarks. And they said, Alfonso Morales, here are some things that you're going to need to do. Here's some new directives that you need to follow, because whether you like it or not, with your 27-year career in law enforcement, stuff is going to change. And if you can't roll with the punches, then you're just not the right guy for the job. But we'll give you a chance. We're going to give you a 6-month review. We're going to see how you perform. We're going to see how the community believes in your tenure as chief. And that is the most important thing that I believe that has happened. The streets spoke. I was at the press conference yesterday. Steve DeVogus gave some inspiring words. Liz Brown gave some inspiring words. And my good friend Vaughn Mays, my good friend Ashanti Hamilton gave some inspiring words. My good friend Fred Royal gave some inspiring words. That cross-section of our community, which has its own hierarchy of leadership that most of y'all don't know anything about, that part of our community spoke. And they are not happy with the chief. And that was reflected in this, because we call the Fire and Police Commission a board of citizens, right? So it's the community. Now it's very political because they're all appointees, but essentially that is our voice, that is the oversight of the police chief, okay? He has a 6-month review. Alfonso Morales did. He failed his 6-month review. They said, here are some directives in which you need to get these taken care of before your 6-month review. You know what Alfonso Morales did? Hired a PR firm and hired a lawyer. That's what he did. He's spitting in the face of the community that he is supposed to protect and serve. But let me not make this personal about him, because I know that he's going to want to do that. He's going to want to make it personal. It ain't personal. It's about your job. You about to lose it. And your job is a very important one. And in your job, per the contract, you got a 6-month review. The people, the citizen board, the streets didn't like how you performed in your 6-month review. And also, per the authority of the Fire and Police Commission, you got demoted. Now, he was expecting to get fired. So this is what hurts so bad. Ooh, that hurts bad. Could you imagine being in a corporate office one day and then having to clean the bathrooms the next? Ooh, because he had that ego thing. Cops got egos. Not all of them, but a lot. Had he been fired, he was ready to sue. But here's another interesting twist in this whole saga. The union is paying for Alfonso Morales' legal counsel. Do you know the history of police officers, unions, and the chief? Because the chief is not unionized. The chief is not a member of the union. Wait a minute, he might be now because he's been demoted. But for the union to come to the aid of the chief, you want to know why? Because he was soft on disciplining bad cops. They could get away with literally murder under Alfonso Morales' tenure, and they knew that. The union never backs the chief. As a matter of fact, I can recall a series of no confidence votes that the union took against our previous police chief, Ed Flynn. They couldn't stand it. It was like a 90% no confidence vote in Ed Flynn repeatedly. But this is different because Alfonso Morales allows these cops to get away with murder, and he is known for being light on discipline when some of these cops should be arrested or at least fired. And so they support him. But here's the clash of the titans that I want you to witness. Alfonso Morales wanted to sue if he got fired. But imagine that. You have a 6-month review per your contract. You screw up on your 6-month review. You didn't hit the benchmarks and the directives that the Fire and Police Commission asked you to make. And then you sue if you lose your job. Can y'all, if you have a 6-month review and you mess it up and then your boss says, look, we're going to give you a chance. Here are some directives that we need you to fix. Here's some things in which you can improve. And then you hire a lawyer. In what parallel universe? You got to keep in mind, the citizens are watching all of this because we're confined to our homes for the most part. So we're watching everything play out. Usually these things would happen behind closed doors or people are going on living their lives. We would call these officer involved incidents just, another thing that happens in the culture of America. But now everybody's paying attention. And he's probably going to try to sue again, but can you imagine not doing your job, using tear gas on peaceful protesters during a pandemic? The last thing we would want is for people to be coughing breathing in these agents that irritate your eyes and your lungs during a pandemic, shooting people with rubber bullets as some kind of deterrent, right? I'm blown away by the whole thing. And the fact that he thinks that he had the ability to sue. Now, the Clash of the Titans is this. He probably will sue because he's got free legal counsel paid for by the police union. He didn't do his job. He got a 6-month review. He got demoted. I mean, he's still a police officer. He's still getting a paycheck. He's still getting a pension. He's still getting all of that. But he just doesn't have the rank because he didn't meet the benchmarks that were set. So he'll sue. Now, the Fire and Police Commission will probably be named as the defendants in the lawsuit. Okay? So keep this in mind. The legal counsel for the Fire and Police Commission, so their legal representation in their suit against Alfonso Morales, where he will be the plaintiff and the Fire and Police Commission will likely be the defendant. Really, the city of Milwaukee, us, we're the defendants in this case. He's the plaintiff. But it's our newly elected African-American city attorney, Tierman Spencer. And I'm going to tell you what, ladies and gentlemen, this is a fight that I want. I want our African-American newly elected city attorney to represent the Fire and Police Commission when Alfonso Morales tries to sue to get his chief position back. We now have acting Chief Brunson. So I've never met Chief Brunson before. I guess we call him acting chief, whatever the case may be. But a number of my colleagues had interviewed him when I was at a previous radio station, so I never got a chance to meet him. And for all accounts, he's a pretty solid fella. I mean, he probably still has some of the same things in his background that most cops that have been on the force since 1995 have in their background. But for the most part, we potentially could be in good hands. I did see Chief Brunson's statement, and and I don't know who wrote it, but the statement that the acting chief has now, Chief Brunson, his statement basically dismissed Alfonso Morales like he was retiring. I'd like to thank Alfonso Morales for his 27 years of law enforcement, and then he goes on to say, I support the men and women of law enforcement in the city of Milwaukee. Just basically dismissed the chief. What is important for people to know is that there is, I'm going to say, a covert kind of leadership in this city. Because the city is segregated, we're not integrated. We're not. The leadership is also segregated. If you think that you're getting your news and you're getting all the information you need day to day from media publications like the Journal Sentinel or local news, you're only getting a portion of the story. Because there is a segment of our community, and I would argue a growing, much more powerful segment of our community that has its own hierarchy of leadership. That's where this came from. The demotion of the chief came from that. It came from you. Because you can't mix and mingle with the status quo leadership in this city because it is overtly racist, and they think that whatever decision they make needs to stand for everyone in this community. It doesn't work that way. And because we are so segregated, we are required to have our own kind of covert leadership in which we make our own decisions about black people, black community, black culture, black business, etc. And we can't divulge all that information to the status quo because they will use it against us. But it is that covert leadership that made a collective decision. They were going to work together. There's going to be a series of steps. And you saw some of that yesterday. Now, this covert leadership that has to operate that way because this city is so sinister. It's so evil. If you're a brown person in the city of Milwaukee and you have ideas of wanting to improve your community, white people, even if they're liberals, still think that when black and brown people get a little bit of power, and we use our power just for equality, not to take stuff from people, but to just to have the same opportunities that everybody else has, that's a threat to white folks. So we have this covert leadership, you see. And it has been emboldened by the democracy being in the streets. This is the most American thing that could have happened. The streets spoke. The democracy spoke. The right to have grievances against your government and protest in the streets fueled all of this. Those individuals spoke. That is exactly how it's supposed to be. So if people are mad at this decision, then you are against the U.S. Constitution as well. Don't pretend to defend the Constitution when you're against people that are peacefully protesting and then the police were militarized against them. You might as well go join Trump. And you should join Trump because he's going to need you. Now, at some point, we probably need to talk about old Joe Biden because he... One thing at a time. One thing at a time. We'll get to Joe Biden in a second. Let's do some good morning, shall we? Star, good morning and happy Friday to you too. Cassandra D, good morning. Tammy Reed, good morning. Happy my 9 a.m. meeting got canceled today. Should be good. Well, thank you, Star. I hope that we're providing all your information needs. Dustin Hegwood said, bringing the old school t-shirts out of the woodwork. So y'all know that I like this shirt though. This is from my days with the Kerry Edwards campaign, because I try to wear a different shirt every day. It's getting thin, y'all. I've been wearing a different shirt every day since May. You're going to start seeing some wild stuff. I'm going to pull out the Christmas sweaters in a minute. Don't think I won't. Charles Reeves says good morning. Good morning, Benita. Nicole Renee, good morning to you. Ronald Gergen says, I am listening. Thank you, Ronald. Good morning, Renee Lewis. Udell Harris, good morning. Mayor needs to go next. Ooh, the mayor's got to be scared. Had Tom Barrett not just gotten reelected, if Tom Barrett had a campaign right now, I'm going to tell you what, if Tom Barrett was on the August 11th ballot, he would lose the election. Now, Tom has kind of been playing both sides. He has. He came out and gave a statement against the chief, which is something very rare if it happens ever for Tom Barrett to say something against the chief. When Tom Barrett said, Alfonso Morales really does need to fire Mike Mattioli. That is not typical Tom Barrett, but that was Tom Barrett throwing a dart at the chief to try and weaken him. Okay? But now all of a sudden, Tom Barrett is upset about the decision that the Fire and Police Commission made. And didn't Tom Barrett appoint most people on that commission? So why would you be upset at your appointees when your appointees are listening to the people in this town that are the democracy? That's the part I don't get. So Tom Barrett played his role in weakening the chief. I assure you, you guys played a role too. When we started our petition to remove the chief, we got 6,000 signatures, better than 6,000 signatures in the first 30 days. And so I sent an email to the mayor, to the Fire and Police Commission on your behalf, if you guys don't mind. Don't worry, I spell checked it. And I gave the reasons as to why the chief should be fired. And then the comments that you gave to justify your signature as to why the chief should be fired. I sent all of that information to every member of the Common Council. And then you know what you saw after that? Because our signatures and our words gave members of the Milwaukee Common Council the courage they need to fight the good fight. And almost the next day, the black members of the Common Council, well, most of them, came out condemning the chief of police. All we have to do, ladies and gentlemen, is play our part. And what our part is, when our African-American elected officials go out on a limb and risk everything, they risk their careers, they risk their credibility, when they stick up for black people, all we have to do is stand by them. We can't just throw them to the wolves. They have to know that when they go out there and risk everything for us, for the betterment of this city, that we have their back. And we show them that we have their back. People went out into the streets to show our elected officials that they have our back, or we have their back, rather. When you signed your name, when you gave your commentary, and I sent that commentary to all of our members of the Milwaukee Common Council, they felt like they had support to condemn the chief. And look what happened. The streets won, Chief Morales 0. Dustin, replying to Tammy Reed, said, it's hard wearing a different shirt every day. It kind of is. Wait, I thought the mayor wanted him gone too. You know what? I thought the mayor wanted him gone as well, but I don't know what goes into Tom Barrett's thinking or whatever his political calculus is. But the movement that can demote the chief, because you got to keep in mind, demoting somebody is worse than firing him. You fire the chief, he can probably maintain his position while the lawsuits settle. I'm not really sure how that works, but the chief was ready to sue us for him not meeting the benchmarks of his 6-month review that he knew he was going to have because it was a part of the contract that he signed. So I don't know what, I can't put my finger on why the mayor has. I have my own reasons, but I guess I'm going to keep those internal. But the mayor might want to have this process reversed because if the streets are this powerful, because this didn't even really take that long to get the chief demoted. That's the kind of thing that it takes years. Like a chief has a 4-year contract or a 4-year extension. It takes 3.5 years to even get the political strength or the grassroots organization to demote a chief. This happened in a month. And if that same energy gets turned on whoever is next, maybe it's the mayor, maybe it's other elected officials, I don't know, that should incite fear in their hearts because this didn't even take long. And all it takes is for us to stand together and get the backs and give support to those that are going to do the right thing on our behalf. Milwaukee has never seen anything like this. So you know the old status quo here in this city, they have to be shaking in their boots because I'm going to be honest with you. Collectively, it was a little bit of effort on behalf of a lot of people, right? The effort was spread out amongst tens of thousands of people that finally decided to get off the sidelines and get in the streets or contact their elected officials or get involved in this political process. Just a little bit of effort on behalf of a lot of people can move mountains in this city. And here's the way we should look at it. This is a victory for Milwaukee. The people who felt like they had nothing, who have no stock and no stake in this city, they have no opinion rather, or don't feel like they have their input is not going to move us forward. Those people now feel justified. They now feel vindicated. But you know what that does? That improves the overall psyche of downtrodden communities. When you know that you can come together for a brief amount of time and affect fundamental change, crime goes down because of those kinds of things, because people think that they can have a positive effect on the city of Milwaukee. They can achieve fairness, they can achieve equality, they can achieve justice. But when they see that they do, some of those folks on the streets might turn their sights away from the streets and off of each other and onto the status quo. And if you're a white person in this city that has made your living off the marginalization of black people and poor people, I mean, you kind of asked for it. You knew this day was coming, but some of them thought they were going to be dead before this day came. Well, that day is here. And they're not dead. And they don't even have coronavirus. They're alive and well. The demands weren't even, MV Skokie, I hope I'm saying your name right. He says the demands weren't even difficult. Come on, really? No, they weren't. But you know what it is? It's this arrogance. And you know that he was at a Back the Blue rally in West Dallas and somebody posted a picture and just the chief got clowned because somebody posted a picture, I think in the article that I posted, the breaking news yesterday of the chief's demotion, and somebody took a picture of the chief in a packed bar, okay, in West Dallas. Nobody wearing masks, no social distancing whatsoever, because they were there to support the chief. He probably shouldn't have been celebrating and gathering his support from people that live in West Dallas. Lena Taylor, good morning, Senator Taylor. Alden Higgins, Brunson was a runner-up to chief, but they picked Morales. Sarah Travis says, you're so right. Thank you, Sarah. It's nice to be told I'm right. Ken Trawl B, okay, I'm late. Who is the acting chief now? So what's Brunson's first name? I probably should know that. Good morning, Eileen Seeger. Good morning, L.A. Thomas. Antonio Glenn, good morning. Good morning and TGI Friday to you, Mary Braun. Nicole Renee, Milwaukee screwed up. Senator Lena Taylor should have been the mayor. You know, it's a matter of timing, you know what I mean? Because the thing about elections and campaigns is sometimes it's just luck. Sometimes the political winds just happen to shift either in your favor or against you. It's a whole combination of things that have to align, like the stars have to align in just the right way at just the right time to take down a really powerful and entrenched incumbent. And it seems like the stars aligned to weaken Mayor Tom Barrett after his reelection. Now, here's the thing. Depending upon how these next series of steps go, depending upon what the mayor's position is going to be today, because God knows what it's going to be today. Because for a while, if you would ask Tom Barrett behind closed doors if he wanted Alfonso Morales fired, he would have told you yes, because what the mayor didn't know, and I think this embarrassed Tom Barrett. It embarrassed him. When you're a mayor of a city like ours, you don't want to be embarrassed because sometimes just the statistics of your city is embarrassing enough. So he was embarrassed when he found out through other people and other channels that Alfonso Morales is a Republican, a Trump-loving Republican. The mayor didn't know that. And I'd imagine if the mayor would have known that, he may have put his support behind Chief Brunson or maybe somebody else. Because here's where it got ugly. And this goes to a comment that Mary had made in a previous broadcast. Mary said that she voted, sorry to out you, Mary, but if you said it publicly, then I can use that information. What you want me to do? Mary said she voted for Tom Barrett in April because he brought the DNC to Milwaukee. So we quickly pushed back on that because that was not the case. Tom wasn't even the first person in the room when the DNC discussions were happening about the city of Milwaukee. He was like on the conference call, but not really in the room. He was on the conference call, but probably on mute. There were other big boys at that table. Tom Barrett was just an invited guest. But when political higher-ups connected to the Democratic National Committee found out that the chief of police in the city of Milwaukee was a Trump supporter, that almost pulled the plug, okay? Because a lot of having a convention, which we are not even really going to have because Joe Biden isn't even coming to Milwaukee to accept the nomination. But a lot of putting on a convention is a security protocol. The DNC has to work with the Secret Service, and they have to work with local law enforcement. Speaking of which, 100 or more local law enforcement agencies decided they were not going to come to Milwaukee for whatever reason, because we're anti-cop here, or because we hold police accountable. I don't know what it is, or because the streets are speaking. We know how embarrassing that is when you've got a Democratic mayor of a Democratic city in a battleground state, okay? A battleground state, the city that essentially gave Donald Trump his electoral victory in 2016, and our chief of police that has to work with the DNC for security protocols for the convention is a Trump supporter. That's very embarrassing. And to the mayor's credit, I don't think he knew that. He should have. Because Tom Barrett has access to information that some of us may never get. So Chief Alfonso Morales, either he wasn't vetted or it was a political move to get another Latino as police chief in the city of Milwaukee, because our Latino community in this city, not only is it growing, it's growing in economic power and it's growing in political power. So sometimes that's a political move. Because one thing that we marginalized communities will do, if we don't see people like us in positions of power, we make a real big deal out of that. In fact, that could potentially cost you your political career. If you have an administration that is entirely white, and that is how they operate with the best interests of a white Western European philosophy, then people of color are going to naturally be marginalized. So if we can point to that, especially in a majority minority city, if you don't have diversity, not just, there's different types of diversity. And what they sometimes do, and Democrats make me mad to no end with this, because they don't want black people, because we bring too much. We got so much pent up aggression. We have so many, different examples of how we have been pushed to the side. When we get in the corporate boardroom, we bring all that out. And sometimes they don't want to deal with that. So what they'll do is they'll just get a woman and call that their diversity. Or they'll find a gay person. Well, we're diverse. Look at Henry over there. He is our gay. Democrats do that. And they call it diversity. And I'm not going to throw stones at Tony Evers. Because, there was a picture that Tony Evers was very proud of, I'm sure, because it was posted on social media and it was shared far and wide, of his diverse cabinet, all white women. All white women, and then like a Native American woman, I think. But you had to really stare at the picture to see if there was any color anywhere. But I'm glad he posted that picture, because here's what white folks, and Republicans are different because diversity to them is like a Catholic. That's diversity for a Republican. But even white Democrats, it's something that they fail to see, and it's why they cannot properly outreach to our communities. They think diversity is white women, and that suffices for all women. Black women and white women have got totally different issues, right? The issue of race comes before the issue of gender. white women could vote before black women in this country. Black men could vote during Reconstruction before white women. And the reason for the suffrage movement in this country, and you can do your research on this, is because white women in this country were pissed off that Reconstruction gave black men the right to vote, but white women didn't have the right to vote. And so what did white, liberal, former abolitionist women do? They went down south and they got southern white women upset and enraged and encouraged them to organize so that they could get the right to vote because black men had it first. So even the roots of white feminism is inherently racist. How women got a political voice in this nation, let me be clear, how white women got their political voice in this nation is because they were upset that black men got the right to vote first. And that still filters through to this day. Mark Superfly Chambers, I like that name, Mark Superfly Chambers, says Barrett claims the meeting and outcome was not good government. I think he mistaken this for the election commission response to the April election. Now, you're right, that was not good government. That's an interesting one too, because the April 7th election, for all intents and purposes, other than the Supreme Court, the state Supreme Court pick that we technically got, but it's still a majority conservative state Supreme Court. I'm glad we didn't cancel or postpone the April 7th election. And a lot of you wanted to. Remember that? We need to cancel the election because of the coronavirus. There are some things that we now see that take precedent, even over a health pandemic. Because the whole point of this democracy and why we have it and why you have your right to vote, and y'all know this because everybody's been telling you this. People fought and died for your right to vote, right? Which means that if you have to risk your life to go vote, now there's precautions you can take during the pandemic to where you can minimize your chances of getting sick. Just use those precautions when you go vote, because I'm encouraging people to use those same precautions when they go and vote on August 11th. But you can't postpone an election when Donald Trump is president, because had we postponed our April 7th election, and a lot of people on the left would have been really, really happy with that, Donald Trump would have said, hey, guess what I'm going to do? Because Wisconsin did it. And you know what else he would have said? He said, Wisconsin has a Democrat governor. If they postpone their election, I'm going to postpone the federal election too. I'm glad we didn't, because we would have regretted it. And it would have been our fault. I'm sick of stuff being our fault. Always blaming Wisconsin. We don't even do nothing to nobody. Except Chicago. We do stuff to them. Justin Firminich. Good morning, Justin. Barrett may be looking at the possible cost of a lawsuit from Morales. That's the only reason I can think of for his apparent change of heart. You know what? So I don't have the chief of police, what is he now, Captain Morales? Doesn't he have to get like a different hat now? Because the chief has a different, doesn't the chief have a different hat? Doesn't he have like a different shield, the chief? Like a different uniform with different chevrons? Brunson was like, give me that hat. Took it right off his head. If you get demoted, and so here's where I think the Fire and Police Commission covered their bases. Because we knew that with a 6-month review coming up, and here's the thing, this is why I don't feel sorry for Chief Morales. Dude had 6 months to prepare for a 6-month review. He got lead time, okay? Didn't prepare for it. If you don't meet, and they gave him another chance. They're like, okay, here's some directives, because if policing changes, then our chief has to respond to those changes. If there are things that are happening that is policy and procedure for the Milwaukee Police Department, and those policies and procedures are seen as outdated or no longer effective, okay? Then you have to be able to pivot. Law enforcement can't just exist, because if it did, it would still be a slave patrol. So law enforcement has to evolve. And because law enforcement needed to evolve because of what we saw with people taking to the streets, you know, the U.S. Constitution out there, the democracy in action, they said, here, Chief, here's some stuff you need to change. Get back to us in this amount of time to let us know how you are going to lead the department in this new era of law enforcement. Now, the chief says he complied with all but one and gave reasons why he couldn't comply with all of them. Whatever. But you can't sue if you don't meet the benchmarks. The Fire and Police Commission covered their bases when they gave the chief another chance before his 6-month review to right some of the wrongs or to be in compliance. And he hired a PR firm, and I know the guy who owns the PR firm that the chief hired. When in the world does a public figure hire somebody to do PR for them when they're not doing their job, and to make it so the chief doesn't have to do his job, he could just manipulate the media? This is Twilight Zone stuff here. In no other universe should this happen, let alone in law enforcement in the city of Milwaukee. So the Police and Fire Commission, when they go to court, and ultimately they will, and the chief said, I want my job back, they were unfair to me. Any reasonable judge, and no, I'm not a lawyer, can say, Alfonso Morales, they did give you directives, and they did give you time to comply with those directives, and it was up to the Fire and Police Commission to determine whether you complied adequately with those directives. You did not. Per the contract that you signed, you have a 6-month review, and if you don't meet the benchmarks, even if the benchmarks change from the commission that gives you your job, you can't sue for that. If I suck at my job, or if my boss gives me another list of duties, you know what I can do? I can quit. Because I don't want to do it. You take this job and shove it. I can quit if I can't do the duties of my job. But he said, I'm going to sue so I still don't have to comply and still keep my job and keep my rank. That did not happen. We knew yesterday that the Fire and Police Commission had 3 options. They could fire him, they could demote him, and they could discipline him. One of those 3 things was going to happen. But that's not a shock to the chief. He knew that one of those 3 things could happen. But he thought because now he has the support of the police union that he didn't have to do anything about that. That he didn't have to actually adhere to the standards, the high standards that we as a community and a democracy set for our police chief. Michael Brunson. There we go, L.A. Thomas. Thank you. Rodney Jackson says, that's why I get my props to Frank Nitti. That's why I get give my props to Frank Nitti. He's going hard. You know, our Frank Nitti here in the city of Milwaukee made national news. The USA Today is covering his march to Washington, D.C. I admire him for doing it, but he's going to go down in history for that one, for sure. But, you know, we kind of need him here, I think. We do. I'm glad that he's taking on that challenge because he's going to solidify his legacy. Because Frank never really got the respect that I think he deserved. Do you know how hard it is to organize a particular segment of our community that just doesn't feel connected to democracy? They don't feel connected to social change. That in and of itself, especially in the city of Milwaukee, right? Like, that's Nobel Peace Prize stuff. In fact, what Frank Nitti is doing, and he's not done yet, is on par, I believe, organizing and really taking a cause and getting results from his because it really started with some of Nitti's marches that he led. And other people, let me not just, I know they get mad when I don't include Khalil Coleman and Tory Lowe and other people that are out there in the streets. We love all of y'all. So let me give credit to everyone. And if I didn't mention your name, I love you too. But to galvanize and organize those folks, and this whole thing started because of how they were treated. They were disrespected. They were tear gassed. Rubber bullets were shot at them. You know, somebody threw a water bottle at one of the cops they're on somewhere downtown, I think on McKinley and Water Street. And the cops tried to say it was an explosive device. It was a Molotov cocktail. They were trying to frame people that are marching and protesting for our democracy so the future generations don't have to do that. So we can get to the accomplishments that we had set for this nation a very, very long time ago. And they tried to demonize those people. And it was all under Alfonso Morales' watch. Let me give you one more. The chief could have mitigated all of this. He was invited, because a lot of local law enforcement around the country, they did one of 2 things when their communities were upset and were marching in the streets for justice for George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Tamir Rice and Trayvon Martin and others and Eric Garner and others. Some police departments said, we're going to march with you. I'm going to kneel with my whole department, some of these police chiefs would say around the country. My whole command staff is going to march with you. We're going to protect you. We're going to pray with you. We're going to kneel with you. Had Alfonso Morales did that. Now, he tried to attend a rally or a march later on. By that time, it was too late. But when the streets, who nobody gave any credit to, who nobody respected, requested the chief join them and have a conversation with some of the community leaders, had that taken place, and had Alfonso Morales did more than walk 2 or 3 blocks with people. If he would have said, address the crowd and address the protesters and said, I understand, I feel your pain, I'm going to do better, even though it might be some things that are outside of my purview of my job. I want to change this department so we all can work together. And if the chief would have joined hands with people and would have walked with the marchers for a mile or two, we would have given him a pass. And you know we would have. We'd have given him a pass on being a Republican. We'd have given him a pass on some of the things that he said. We'd have given him a pass on him comparing himself to being crucified like Jesus Christ. That's all he had to do. But here's his arrogance. He didn't even do that. We gave him so many lifelines. And at some point, when you're in a bad relationship, because we are definitely, well, we're now separated from the chief. We were married to him. We had a 4-year marriage contract. We were married to Ed Flynn. Ed Flynn divorced us. Cool. Started dating Chief Morales, acting chief. Then he became chief. Started dating him. Marriage didn't work out, but we kept giving him chances. We kept letting him back in. Kept asking him to do right. You better do right this time. And he just kept doing the same old, and now he's been demoted to side piece. From chief to side piece. Alden Higgins saying he's our gay, talking about diversity. Kobe Lloyd, America is a republic if we can keep it, Kobe Lloyd. Kobe Lloyd, why did Biden didn't show for the Democratic National Convention? So when does it start? Next week? So he's 77 years old, and it's probably not advisable for 77-year-old Joe Biden to travel. I don't know the specific reason. All I know is that he said earlier this week, that he's not going to come to the city of Milwaukee to accept his nomination. Brunson was like, finally. Now, Brunson is the chief, but here's the thing, Michael Brunson. I don't know you. A bunch of my colleagues know you. They think you're a straight shooter, think you're a decent dude. I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt. But here's where it kind of all comes to a head. So there was a lawsuit where the ACLU had collected data from the City of Milwaukee Police Department. And the data said, NAACP also has this data as well. You can look it up. That they found the racial disparities in policing in the city, and they were just like disgusting. Like African-American men were 7 times more likely to be pulled over, and Hispanic men were much more likely to be pulled over and harassed by the police. Like law enforcement was very selective in the city. And so there was a lawsuit. And to settle the lawsuit, the City of Milwaukee and our police department had to comply with a series of directives. Now, he didn't tell you this, but I'm going to tell you this. Our county executive, David Crowley, is a plaintiff in the lawsuit against the Milwaukee Police Department because he was racially profiled and named in this plaintiff as an example of the egregious and unfair policing tactics in this city. And that's the county executive. So no matter who you are, now he wasn't county executive at the time, but it's so widespread in our community, the police officers and their selective enforcement. And so what Ed Flynn was supposed to do on his way out was begin to shift and change the department and the culture of the department. I don't know how you do that. To say, look, we're being sued, and here's how we have to settle by, being fair to people. So Ed Flynn leaves, but the lawsuit and the settlement still remain. Alfonso Morales needed to be the chief that was going to help the city of Milwaukee get in compliance with a settlement because we were sued because of racial profiling. And Alfonso Morales, here's the thing, I don't know the details of that, but I know that it doesn't seem like that was his first priority based upon his actions in the last several months. I know he's mad. He gave out those little $7.99 pizzas now. So I heard something about the chief giving out pizzas. And let me also say this. So last night, I got together with some close friends. I'm going to call them the covert leadership in the city of Milwaukee. They know who they is. And Sherwin is a vegan. I don't know if you knew that. I'm kind of embarrassed to say it sometimes because being a black vegan, people look at you real funny. Like, you don't like barbecue? You can't eat barbecue? Even my mother didn't quite understand. Mom, I'm vegan. I don't eat meat anymore. No more animal product. Well, you can have chicken. Well, turkey's not meat. So I had pizza last night. Now, the pizza didn't have any meat on it. It was regular pizza, veggie pizza. Y'all, I haven't had pizza since like last summer. Like it's like probably August, September of 2019. Y'all, I ate so much pizza last night. I kept eating pizza because we ordered a bunch of pizzas. Not them 7.99 pizzas. We got the good pizza. Because if you don't eat pizza, get the good pizza. Ooh, I ate so much pizza. And I thought I was going to get sick because I don't eat dairy either. I'm good. I'm good. I have my normal morning sweat sheen. It's like, it gets hot in here. And if I open a window, that's when my neighbors decide they want to cut down trees and cut the grass, so I just suffer for an hour. Mike Braswell, to play devil's advocate, you know I don't like that term. What grounds did the FPC can change the expectation? I'm not sure if I understand the question. If that commission, that very powerful citizen board, can create and terminate the chief's contract, and they have, via state law, the power to demote or terminate or discipline a police chief, then I don't know. I guess they would have the power to change expectations, even though I might be missing your question. Understand the why they changed the expectation. So why they changed the expectations of the chief, I guess I can attempt to answer that. Because the way policing was executed in this city wasn't working, and we have a lawsuit to prove that, since everybody wants to be sue happy, since the chief wants to sue to get his job as chief back. We were sued. The ACLU filed a lawsuit, and the city of Milwaukee lost. So the expectations of policing have to be in accordance of a lawsuit, essentially a consent decree that we are under right now. Diane Thomas said, let's not forget, he attended that Back the Blue rally in a bar in Dallas with no masks during a mask mandate. Morales lost the people long before. Now let's get Mattioli fired. And a lot of this. And what I don't do is, I love my Latinx brothers and sisters, because their fight is our fight. And I also don't like how as a community, we as black people, now not all of us, I try to give as much time as I could and attention to the issue. Their babies were getting locked up by Trump at the border, right? They were separating children, and we found a reason to not care or to not get involved in that. So I want you to know that I care about that. But what I don't do is, as a black man with my own set of experiences, I don't want to interject myself into Latino, Hispanic politics in this city, right? Because the cultures are very, very different. I got respect for them, but I won't question the judgment of their support or lack thereof of Chief Alfonso Morales, because that is their decision to make based upon their culture. Now, I've also found a couple of things. There is a segment of the Latino community that supports Alfonso Morales come hell or high water, no matter what he does, no matter what he says, no how many pizzas he buys, how many times he compares himself to all sorts of Jesuses. They support him. Then there's another segment of our Latino, Hispanic brothers and sisters on the South Side that think that he is a disgrace to the culture. And just let me know, let Sherwin know when he can get in, because what I don't want to do is, I'm certainly not going to pick a side. And I learned that a long time ago when I made the mistake. I'll never forget this mistake. And those of you that have made this same mistake, you won't forget it either. By accident, calling a Mexican a Puerto Rican, or by accident, calling a Puerto Rican a Mexican. You'll only do that once. Then I knew, because in our ignorance of our brothers and sisters, who are indigenous people, let's be clear about that. Native Americans in Mexico were just conquered by the Spanish, and that's why they speak Spanish. They're all Native Americans. Unless you come from Spain, which is Western Europe, and those are white people, but it gets kind of confusing. But then you have the Latino diaspora. You've got Brazil, and you've got Argentina. You got all of South America. It's a whole thing. It's let's say a colorful and very interesting culture, which I guess probably leads me to Joe Biden's statement. But before I get to Joe Biden, I'd rather end the show with Joe Biden instead of having him take up all of the oxygen. There is a diversity in thought in the Latino Hispanic community that I may not be qualified to speak on, because I am not a part of that culture. All I can do is support and see that they are in the same struggle that we are in. And they are marginalized. In fact, they got it just as bad, if not worse, especially under this administration, because this administration, President Trump, if you want to call him that, built the basis of his campaign by trying to wall off America. And that in and of itself should have been enough for us to do more to make sure Donald Trump didn't get elected. Because if you want to build a wall between Mexico and the United States, that's only a wall so that people can't come. We're still shipping goods. If something is made in Mexico, the wall is not going to stop those products. You see how unfair that is? We just didn't want the people to come here, but that makes no sense because the people are just following the goods because they're providing labor. They want to come to this country to work in industries that can help distribute the commodities and provide the labor for the goods that are going back and forth between America and Mexico and America. That's the part that was most egregious to me, that goods can travel across the border. Finished products, commodities, natural resources can go to and fro whenever they want, but the people can't. People need to be able to follow resources. It's the whole reason why black people are up here from the South, because the factory jobs and the industry was up north. The South was decimated. There was nothing left. There was no industry in the South. There also was no labor unions. We came up north to Detroit, to Gary, to Chicago, to Milwaukee, because there was industry and there was also very strong labor unions. And an unmentioned part of our civil rights struggle is before we had civil rights as black people, we had labor rights. But that seems to be kind of forgotten in our conversations about history. So we would come and leave the segregated South because we were following the opportunity, following the goods, following the commodities, the natural resources, and the products to where the factories were. And then we were protected by our labor unions. Now, that didn't necessarily protect you from racial discrimination, but at least your job was secure. And a big part of our struggle for black people is just the ability to be able to make money. We deal with a lot, we tolerate a lot, but don't mess with our money. Be as racist as you want, because here's the thing. If you're black and have a job and have benefits and can provide for your family, then racist white people matter less. It's still a problem, but you can just kind of avoid them, right? But to impede someone's ability to make a living, that's an unforgivable offense. Well, we got a couple of replies here. The Bucks protest. You know what? You know what that did? When Giannis got out there, y'all need to respect Giannis. Respect Giannis off the court. The league MVP of the team with the best NBA record led a protest. And so I got into a big argument with a former friend because, I lost a bunch of friends since George Floyd's murder and last week. Because I can't tolerate nonsense anymore. Because they're on the wrong side. And if you're not on the side of the Constitution, on the side of democracy, on the side of the streets where our democracy is living, then I can't fool with you. There's a lot of people out there in the world that will love you. I can't do it. We got to separate. But that brought a kind of international attention on what was happening, not just in Milwaukee, but around the country. Because we sometimes, have mixed feelings about our sports figures getting involved in political causes. But this is different because Giannis is Greek, but Giannis is also black. We also know that Sterling Brown had a run-in with the Milwaukee Police Department where they stomped on his ankle. He's a basketball player. You guys remember that? When that happened I think Alfonso Morales was chief. That was early on in Alfonso Morales' tenure as chief. And let me tell you how that changed the political paradigm, at least somewhat, in Milwaukee. Sterling Brown, Bucks player, Bucks we had an opportunity, I think. They lost some of their momentum to bring a national championship to the city of Milwaukee, and that's something that we really need because we don't really get a lot of respect as a city. We need something that's going to overshadow all the negative aspects of our town. And so we invested a lot of money in the Bucks. We paid for half of that new arena. You understand? And so when the Milwaukee Police Department wants to, first of all, their conduct is disgusting and egregious, and quite honestly, it's illegal. I think some of the officers were disciplined. I don't know if any were fired. 1 or 2 may have been fired. But think about what we invested in the Milwaukee Bucks. We staked a big old piece of our future in that team, so much so we took a gamble, didn't we? We gave them taxpayer money, $250 million to build that arena. And what are these cops going to do? Stomp on the ankles of one of our players. He is a part of our investment, a part of the culture in the city of Milwaukee, in which we're trying to show something positive, and the cops didn't even respect that. All the Bucks front office was pissed because they saw it differently. Yes, it's a family atmosphere. Yes, of course they love one of their players, but they're like, you're trying to intentionally ruin the career of one of our athletes that we have an investment in, that we've invested millions of dollars in, and that is reckless disregard. Again, back to what I said a little while ago. Be racist if you want to. Nothing we can really do about that because we're tired of trying to convince you. But once you want to impede on someone, their ability to make money, if Sterling Brown would have broken his ankle or would have shattered his ankle to where he couldn't play basketball anymore, they would have impeded his ability to make money. That's disgusting. And it's that kind of stuff that the community is sick of. And now the community has reached a level of confidence with their ability to organize and get things done in short order. They didn't get the chief fired. They got him demoted, which is worse. Because if he gets fired, he's a martyr. Then law enforcement from all around the country would rally behind him. But here's the thing about Alfonso Morales. He's still a cop. He's just less of one. Mark Superfly Chambers said, yes, I was at that protest. Chief side piece. Yeah, because we were married to Chief. Now we're dating. I guess we're seeing Michael Brunson as the interim chief. We're in a relationship with him now. Like we just got him off of Tinder. He was the backup. Because our main relationship, it didn't work out. So we had to demote Chief Morales, the side piece. So what we're going to do from this point forward is Chief Morales doesn't get to go out with us on Valentine's Day. We hang out with him on the 15th of February. Like he's not the number one. L.A. Thomas said, right, Brunson, don't come up in here acting like Clark. Why you got to bring up David Clark? Turkey is not meat. Yes, it is, Mike. Since when are you a vegan, said Sarah Travis. Technically it was a New Year's resolution, but I went out New Year's Day. I didn't do anything New Year's Eve, but I went out New Year's Day. And that's when I was technically going to start my no meat, no animal products, no dairy, no animal protein whatsoever New Year's Day. But then I went out New Year's Day and somebody gave me some ice cream. And I said, no, you guys, this is my first day of not eating dairy, not eating animal products. You better eat this damn ice cream. And they put it in front of my face. Don't order me the ice cream. There's 5 people at the table. 5 of us? Oh yeah, we'll have 5 ice cream sundaes. I said, no, I'm cool. Just order 4. And then the server was like, sir? I was like, no, I don't want one. Just order 4. And the lady I was sitting next to was like, order 5. And I had to eat it. And it was delicious. But that was the last ice cream I had. It was on New Year's Day evening. We need more than an hour from you. This city needs to be more informed. You know what, guys? Thank you for that, by the way. But there's a lot of other people, like Michelle Bryant, my good friend, my former colleague at WNOV. She does a broadcast. There's other people. Nitty is on live. I think they're entering Indiana now. I saw a bit of his Frank Nitty, who's marching from the city of Milwaukee to Washington, D.C. They're marching 30 miles a day. And the justification he gave for it was actually kind of interesting because he's like, we're marching 15 to 20 miles anyway in the city of Milwaukee. Might as well just march an additional 10 miles and go all the way to D.C. and be in Washington, D.C. by the 57th anniversary of the March on Washington. But I think their math is a little bit off because they're going to have to do more than 30 miles in a couple of those days to get to D.C. by the 30th anniversary or the 57th anniversary of the March on Washington. But he did a live this morning. He's probably live right now. And he's wearing like sandals. Somebody needs to get Nitty some what kind of shoes do you wear to walk across the country? Some kind of fancy Nikes or something? So what's your take on Biden's remarks? All right. And here's what I don't want to do. So let me give a bit of a disclaimer. I'm not apologizing for Joe Biden at all. I don't need people thinking that they have an option to not vote for him. And I'm getting real sensitive to that. Like I took some heat yesterday because I wore my Maggie for Governor shirt. Maggie was running as an independent candidate during the midterm election of 2018 where Tony Evers got elected governor, okay? People, Sherwin, why would you wear that shirt? And she's an independent candidate. And whatever, I gave my reasons. I didn't even have to justify, but I gave reasons. But the governor's director of his Milwaukee office was promoting, had on her Facebook page, an independent candidate. Because I guess one of these independent parties has got a black woman running as vice president. And she was promoting that. So y'all didn't come for her. Don't come for me when I wear my Maggie t-shirt. And plus, I got to wear a different shirt every day. I forgot I had that shirt. I'm not going to apologize for Joe Biden because here's the thing about being white. Like I know, but because they get the benefit of the doubt in so many situations when it comes to opportunity, when it comes to education, when it comes to real estate, when it comes to their interaction with law enforcement and the criminal justice system. So the white criminal, we want to look at them as mentally ill before they're a criminal because we just give them the benefit of the doubt. That's one of the benefits of being white in this country. You just get things afforded to you solely because you're allergic to the sun. And that's all white skin is. White people are allergic to the sun. The sun that gives us energy, that gives the planet life, that thing, it gives white people skin cancer. I'm not trying to be funny. It's weird how they're supposed to be supreme, but they're allergic to the sun. However, I digress. So when white people say stupid things, they don't get the benefit of the doubt because they already have the benefit of the doubt in so many other aspects of life that when they say stupid stuff, they need to just own it and take their lashings for it, okay? And so I'm not going to apologize for Joe Biden, but I believe, because he's no stranger to black people. He isn't. You may think he is, and something, 1994 crime bill, which Bernie Sanders voted for too. He sat and was a loyal, faithful servant to Barack Obama. And that's really hard to ask of an old white guy to just not overshadow or try to take shine away from Barack Obama. So, fair enough. So I'm going to read Joe Biden's comments. I got a CNN story here. And so I'm not apologizing for him. I'm not taking up for him. But there's something that he was getting at that he could not very well articulate. That is why, and this is one of the conversations I had last night, Joe Biden shouldn't debate Donald Trump at all. Because Joe Biden is not going to lose any support by not debating Donald Trump. Because it's just going to be a bunch of ridiculous stuff, insults getting hurled back and forth. The moderators are going to try and struggle for control. Biden doesn't need to debate Donald Trump because most people in this nation, just by looking around, realize that the choices couldn't be more clear. Biden is not going to win anybody over with a stellar debate performance. You mean to tell me that a Trump supporter is going to be like, that Joe Biden really answered my question on foreign policy and domestic oil reserves. I'm going to vote for him. That ain't going to happen. From CNN, presumptive Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden sought Thursday night to limit the political damage after he said in an earlier interview that the Latino community in the United States was diverse, quote, unlike the African American community with notable exceptions. In 3 tweets, Biden said he wanted to, quote, clarify his remarks, which Donald Trump's campaign had seized on in its latest effort to undercut the former vice president's support among black voters. So there's literally nothing that Donald Trump can say to seize on Joe Biden's remarks, so Trump needs to stop wasting his tweets. Quote, earlier today I made some comments about diversity in the African American and Latino communities that I want to clarify. In no way did I mean to suggest that the African American community is a monolith, not by identity, not on issues, not at all. Here's what I think Joe Biden was trying to say. Because I could see myself saying something like Joe Biden saying. But if I say it, it's totally different because I'm black. And Joe Biden being white, you don't get the benefit of the doubt when you say something that can be construed as racially charged. Here's it's one of the fundamental differences that he may have been alluding to. Again, I'm not apologizing for him. Some Latinos in this country think they're white and can pass for white and can call themselves white Hispanic because there's a category. There's non-white Hispanic and there's white Hispanic. Some of them, based upon their phenotype, the physical expression of their genetics, they're white people. They call themselves white. They consider themselves white. That's what they are. Black people can't do that. We can't just say today we're white. We're some, not all, Hispanics can consider themselves white and have the same benefits and privileges as such, especially if you can't tell by their physical features and they change their names. Black people can't do that. So in that regard, you have got non-white Hispanics and you have white Hispanics in this country. The latter pass as white people and get the benefits afforded to. Black people don't have that option. So when Joe Biden talked about the diversity in the Latino community, because there's a large segment of Latinos that are really Republican, like ultra mad conservative for real to the 10th degree. Yes, there's some of that in the black community, but it's not ingrained in a significant part of black culture to be conservative. And then there's other issues deep within the community about Fidel Castro and about Cuba that does create a different kind of diversity. Like it's not political for African Americans to have a natural separation from Africans on the continent, where there may be some natural separation between Latinos in America and Latinos in Cuba and Fidel Castro. So that's a whole nother paradigm that black folks don't really have the same apples to apples comparison. But because there is the possibility, and even on the census form, Hispanics can be considered white, because you can't have a census form that says non-black Caucasian, black Caucasian. They have a category in which they are included in white people. And broadcast earlier this week, I don't know if it was Wednesday or yesterday, these days are running together. In communities where there's a higher amount of white crime, right? Per capita crime committed is by more white people. They will then stratify those categories into Hispanic white, because then they'll blame the rise in crime or the crime statistics on not the regular white people, but the Hispanic white. Now, if you have a community that does have a mix of white and Hispanic white, non-Hispanic white, etc., and crime rates are low, then they don't stratify out the category of Hispanic white. That may be what Joe Biden was getting at, because some folks in that culture can legally qualify as white people. Okay, that's it, right? We covered all? We covered enough. Thanks, guys. Have yourselves a wonderful and productive Friday. Remember, hey, talking to you. It's an election on Tuesday. You still can vote up until Sunday at 3 p.m. at the Municipal Building downtown, at Midtown, at 57th and Capitol, and I think 40th and Forest Home. I think that's the Manitoba School. So you still can cast your vote early at those 3 locations, or just do what I'm going to do. Vote on Tuesday. I'll talk to you guys on Monday. Have a good weekend.